Today's lesson is Chapter 5, Lesson 4, which can be found on pages 323 through 328. Our objective today is I can add decimals using base 10 blocks. Question 1. The single block in base 10 represents a blank because it takes 100 of these to make one whole. Question 2. When you begin adding, you always want to start with the blank place value.
How would you add 35 hundredths plus 25 hundredths? In this lesson, you will learn how to add decimals by using base 10 blocks. Let's review. You've probably used base 10 blocks to represent whole numbers in the past. For example, 123. You can represent 123 with one set of hundredths to equal one group of 100 for 100, two groups of 10 to equal 20, and three single units to equal the three ones. You can see on our chart that that makes 123. Today we will use base 10 blocks to represent whole numbers and decimals. So today the set of blocks with 100 squares represents one whole unit. The set of blocks with 10 blocks represents 1/10 because you would need 10 of these to make a whole unit. The single block represents 1/100th because you would need 100 of these to make a whole unit. Here's an example. 1 23 hundredths would be shown like this. One whole unit for the ones, 2/10ths, and 3 hundredths. And you'll see that that makes 1 23 hundredths. Before we begin to add 35 hundredths plus 25 hundredths, we first are going to make a smart estimate. In a smart estimate, you don't have to round to an exact place, but you want to round to a familiar or easy to use number. So I'm going to round 35 hundredths to 25 hundredths. And I'm going to use 25 hundredths exactly how it is as 25 hundredths. When I add those together in my head, I know that that's about 50 hundredths. So my estimate is that this will be about 50 hundredths. Let's try it with base 10 blocks. First, I need to represent the 3/10ths in 35 hundredths. So I put up 3/10ths. Then I represent the 5 hundredths with 5 single units. I'm going to add 2/10ths for the 2/10ths in 25 hundredths. And I'm going to add 5 hundredths for the 5 hundredths in 25 hundredths. Now it's time to combine them. When you add anything, you want to always start by adding the smallest place value first. So we're going to start by adding 5 hundredths plus 5 hundredths. Wow, look at that. That made one whole group of 1/10. Then we're going to add 3/10ths plus 2/10ths, which gives me 5/10ths. So 5/10ths plus the 1/10 that I made by regrouping my 5 hundredths and 5 hundredths gives me a total of 6/10ths or 60 hundredths. You'll often see it written like this. I know that this is a reasonable answer because it's close to my smart estimate. Let's try another one. You have two ropes that are 1 15 hundredths feet and 2 6 hundredths feet. Together, how long are they? I'm going to start with my smart estimate, and I'm going to round 1 15 hundredths to 1 25 hundredths because it's close and it's easy to work with. 2 6/10ths, I'm going to round to 2. So I'm going to say that my actual answer will be around 2 25 hundredths. Let's give this a try. Here I'm going to represent my 1 in 1 15 hundredths feet with one whole group of 100, then one group of tenths, and 5 groups of singles to show the 5 hundredths. Then I'm going to add 2 wholes. Now where the 0 is, the 0 doesn't represent 0, that there's nothing, but it represents that there are specifically no tenths. And then I'm going to show, so I'm not going to add any tenths in my drawing, then I'm going to show 6 hundredths. Together I'm going to begin by adding, and of course when I add, I'm going to add the hundredths first. Look at that. That not only made 1/10, but it made 1/10 with one piece extra. So my 5 hundredths plus 6 hundredths actually made 1/10 and 100th. When I go to add the tenths, I had 1/10 plus 0/10, so that's just going to stay 1/10, and then I'm going to add my whole numbers. 1 plus 2 is 3. So when I look at that all together, I can see that I have 3 ones, 2 tenths, and 100th. So 3 and 21 hundredths. You'll often see it written like that. This is close to our smart estimate, so it's a good answer. In this lesson, you have learned to add decimals by using base 10 blocks.
Okay, I think that video gave you a really good idea of what we're going to be working on, but here it is in your book on page 323, just to show you what it looks like there. So again, we're using base 10 blocks. It's different than what you're used to. You may have thought of, originally if you saw this, you would assume it's 100. So don't think it's hundredths, because when we're using it here, we're thinking of it as ones, because it's a whole. And then the tens blocks that you're used to are tenths blocks. So that one shouldn't be too tricky. But then what you're used to being the ones blocks, we are now going to call the hundredths, because it's part of the tenths, it's less than the tenths, and it's part of the ones too. So if you're making these, if you're drawing these, and let's say it's $1.30, so we would have one whole block, which is this block, and then we would have 3 tenths and no hundredths in this case. So here's the 3 tenths blocks, and we're adding it with the 50 cents. So it would be just 5 tenths there. And there's no ones and no hundredths. So we'd have 5 10 blocks. Then we can add these together in our drawing over here to kind of see what that would look like. So then there are 8 tenths blocks and 1 whole block. So we know that our answer is going to be $1.80, or 1 8 tenths. Okay, so look back at these questions and answer them in the form.